The Chicago evening was crisp, the city lights reflecting off the pavement as pedestrians rushed past without a second glance. Inside a small, dimly lit sports bar, tucked away in a quiet corner of town, time moved a little slower. Michael Jordan pushed open the door, the soft chime of the bell barely audible over the murmur of conversation and the distant hum of a basketball game playing on a flickering TV. The scent of old leather and aged wood mixed with the aroma of sizzling burgers from the kitchen. He wasn't here for the food. His sharp gaze landed on an old man sitting alone at the far end of the bar. His shoulders slumped, his gray sweater stretched thin over his frame. His hands, once strong, now trembled slightly as he nursed a half-empty glass of water. Jordan knew that face. Before we continue, let me ask you, have you ever seen someone who gave everything to the world, only to be forgotten? What would you do if you could change their story? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe in second chances, subscribe now, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story just for you. Michael approached, his footsteps muffled by the worn wooden floor. The man didn't look up, lost in his thoughts. "Coach?" Jordan's deep voice cut through the noise. The old man's fingers froze around his glass. Slowly, he lifted his head, eyes narrowing as they adjusted to the sight before him. Recognition flickered. Then, disbelief. Michael? The room seemed to shrink around them. For the first time in years, a forgotten coach was being seen again. The bar felt smaller now, as if time had slowed, leaving only Michael Jordan and Coach Henderson in their own space. The noise of conversations and clinking glasses blurred into the background. Jordan leaned back slightly, his eyes scanning the old man's face. The years had etched themselves into his skin, but the fire, the passion that once built champions, still flickered beneath the surface. "You remember the summer drills?" Jordan asked, a small smirk forming. Henderson let out a dry chuckle. "How could I forget? You hated running suicides." Jordan shook his head. "I hated them, but I did them. And I got better. Because you never let me take the easy way out." The old coach took a slow sip of his drink, his hands no longer shaking. "I just wanted you to see what you were capable of." His voice was softer now. "But I was just a coach. You did the rest." Jordan's expression darkened slightly. "You were more than a coach." Henderson sighed, rubbing his temple. "Maybe back then. But now? What am I?" Jordan studied him for a moment. He had heard that tone before. In players who had lost their confidence. In men who had given everything to the game, only to be left behind. "Coach," Jordan said, his voice quieter but firm, "do you know how many players still talk about you? How many still hear your voice in their heads when they push through an extra set, take that last shot, or get back up after a loss?" Henderson blinked, surprised. "You built more than just basketball players," Jordan continued. "You built men. You built resilience. And I promise you, you weren't just forgotten." Henderson exhaled slowly. "Then why does it feel that way?" Jordan reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black envelope. He slid it across the bar toward Henderson. The old man frowned. "What's this?" Jordan nodded toward it. "Something you deserve." Henderson hesitated before picking it up. As he opened it, his breath caught in his throat. Inside was an invitation. Front row seats, the NBA Finals, his name printed in bold letters, his ticket back to the game. His fingers trembled as he traced the embossed lettering. "Mike, I can't accept this." Jordan's smirk returned. "Coach, you made me run suicides till I almost passed out. You're not about to start quitting now." For the first time in years, Coach Henderson didn't feel like just a forgotten name. He felt like he still mattered. The dim glow of the bar's neon sign reflected off the polished countertop as Coach Henderson stared at the ticket in his hands. His fingers trembled slightly. This was a piece of his past he thought was lost. Michael Jordan watched him carefully. "You didn't just coach a team, Coach. You built men. You built me." Henderson exhaled. "It's been a long time since anyone cared." Jordan shook his head. "That's where you're wrong. People still talk about you. It's time you see it for yourself." Henderson let out a slow breath. "Why me?" Jordan smirked. "Because you saw something in a scrawny kid who couldn't make varsity. And I don't forget the people who made me." A few patrons had started to take notice. Whispers of recognition, stolen glances toward the legend sitting across from the old coach. Henderson finally looked up, eyes glassy. "Mike, I don't know what to say." Jordan gave him a knowing nod. "Say yes." A pause. Then, slowly, Henderson nodded. Jordan signaled to the bartender. "Get this man another drink. He's got a game to catch." The bar erupted in quiet applause, a ripple of respect moving through the room. Some nodded at Henderson, some at Jordan, but all understood. Coach Henderson wasn't forgotten. He was a legend, recognized. And as Michael Jordan shook his old coach's hand, he knew this wasn't just a gift, it was a debt repaid. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another special story for you. The dim glow of the bar lights flickered across Coach Henderson's face as he blinked in disbelief. His weathered hands tightened around the glass, his grip unsure as if grounding himself in reality. Michael Jordan pulled out the stool beside him, his towering frame settling comfortably into the space. The noise of the bar faded into the background. "Been a long time, Coach," Jordan said, his voice steady but warm. Henderson exhaled, shaking his head slightly. "Didn't think I'd see you again." Jordan leaned forward, resting his arms on the bar. "Neither did I, but I don't forget the people who got me here." The old man chuckled, but there was a sadness to it. People forget. Time moves on. His eyes flickered toward the muted TV screen, where a new generation of players flashed across the court. Legends fade. Jordan studied him for a long moment. He had spent his entire career proving people wrong, fighting against time itself. And yet, here sat the man who had once shaped him, facing the reality of being left behind. Jordan tapped the bar lightly, signaling the bartender. "A drink for my coach," he said. The bartender nodded, sliding a fresh glass forward. Henderson hesitated before wrapping his fingers around it. "You don't owe me anything, Mike," Jordan smirked. "That's where you're wrong." The weight of the moment settled between them. For the first time in years, a forgotten coach was no longer alone.